Welcome to our weekly wrap-up where we talk about the news stories impacting the Southern California real estate market over the past week. So I'll jump through a few stories here and give you an overview of what we're seeing. So first two stories I'll mention, one of these comes, actually both come via the Wall Street Journal, is that the headline is "Tech Talent Seeks New Opportunities Far from Coast." And so this story is a continuation of a trend, which is basically that with more remote work, or the feasibility of remote work, the acceptance of remote work probably more so, tech talent continues to look for places where they can bring their paychecks with them, so to speak. And the story talks about a Chicago tech company, how they and a Minneapolis company, and how they rarely would even try to secure talent out of New York or Silicon Valley. They just could never do it. And now they're starting to see those resumes. So kind of an interesting trend. And we're seeing some of that in Southern California and Orange County as well, as some of the folks move away from even pricier Bay Area and have chosen to locate in Southern California, where real estate's less expensive than the Bay Area, and perhaps they can take those jobs with them. And so the next story, which is kind of similar, the headline is "Largest Tech Companies Provide Relief to the Ailing Property Sector." And the basic summary of this story is that the pandemic has been rocked pretty hard some commercial property sectors. The lodging industry, the retail industry is probably the biggest, and the office industry as well. One thing that I think a lot of people don't realize with office is that those leases are very long-term, so any immediate impacts in the office market really are muted by the fact that those are long-term obligations in place for those companies. So they're not going to feel it immediately, and then also tech companies are growing a lot, and so where they're seeing the strongest demand for office continue even through the pandemic is where you have a lot of tech companies. And so the tie back for residential, in my mind, is just that the same factors that are driving the health of the office market and tech markets will drive the health of the housing market in areas that have a lot of tech employment. And so it's something to think about. Tech folks migrating to Southern California is certainly good for the housing market. The next article that I'll touch upon is one that talks about mortgage past due payments. And the basic headline is that mortgage delinquencies are up sixfold. And what the discussion is oftentimes is, how is this increase in mortgage delinquencies going to impact the housing market? Are we going to see a great financial crisis 2.0? And the basic, when you boil it all down, the thinking is that we're not. And the reasons for that are many. Probably some of the most significant are the fact that the pandemic, while it's been very significant, could also end very quickly. There's a lot of built-up equity in folks' homes, and so really if someone was in a real tough spot financially, they'd be much more inclined to sell their home. And the fact that values have kind of risen in the face of the pandemic further indicates that there's more cushion for homeowners. If they're in a tough spot, they could sell their home. And quite frankly, there's just not a lot of folks that are in a lot of distress and then have a mortgage loan on their property that creates financial stress on that asset as well. So quick answer is no, we're probably not going to see a meltdown like the great financial crisis. Next story is, the headline is "Virus Will Alter Malls and Office." And really it's kind of a continuation of what I was just talking about. Clearly the biggest shift in this pandemic is this idea that people can do more things virtually. Retail is probably the most significant example of that. By and large, most folks think that those buying habits are not going to go back to the way they were. And so if you've gotten used to buying things on the internet, you're probably going to keep doing it, at least for a lot of things. So the story goes on to talk about the office space. And the interesting thing is even while the office space is under a lot of stress right now, big growing companies continue to lease up and buy office space. And there's this countervailing trend of what they call de-densification. And so for the last, call it 10 years, office environments have gotten more dense. They are now getting less dense to provide a safety cushion for health. And that's a countervailing trend. That means companies need more space. And so while there may be a lot more remote work, the office space is probably going to be just fine. It's going to adapt with time, and where it's going to adapt the most is it may actually be where it's the healthiest too, because it's going to adapt to meet changing needs. And so I think the tie back to residential on this again is just that housing has a lot working for it when you have it near tech-related jobs. And a lot of things are tech now. The auto industry is tech. Amazon, the distribution industry, is clearly tech. And so we just think about in Southern California, the job markets we have here are really pretty extraordinary and more tied to tech. So the last story I'll talk about here today is kind of a cool, fun story called Go Play Outside. And what it talks about is how the #1 amenity now for houses is big yards, big backyard space, and that properties that talk about large yards and outdoor space actually sold significantly faster. I think it was 17% faster, oh, sorry, 27% faster than homes that don't have those features. And so that's a big trend. Look for homes with big yards and ample outdoor space to really do very well and perhaps outperform the broader market. So that's the wrap up for this week. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and look forward to staying in touch through the holidays.